about the first chapter, about how I took us through that first chapter. So I want to go back through that because there's so much in that first chapter that really sets up the rest of the book. I thought that it was important for us to really dive into that first chapter. Okay, hold on one second. Let me get some more light in here. Okay, so for y'all that read the next chapter, just hold off on that. Something I'm doing too is I actually have copied the book into a digital form. I copied the first 17 pages, which is like the first 3 chapters. So anyone who utilizes like Speechify or any type of app that would read the book to you, like I really benefit from that. I just wrote a blog on it and shared it on social media and everything. You can look at my link tree if you want to read that blog. But I share about like some reading techniques. So one things I love to utilize is audio books and reading apps and actually phones. A lot of the phones have a read thing to them as well. You can take pictures of anything or upload PDFs and then have the thing read to you. Okay, so that helps me because I do a lot of reading. So I've actually uploaded those, and I can actually send those in. I could actually send those out, like what I've taken the pictures of. If you want to utilize that, right? Like I use and I use Audible, Speechify, and then there's some like accessibility thing on my Google phone. So but yeah, you can read that blog post if you want to know more about that. Okay. All right, so let me bring up my thing right here. Okay. All right, so we're going back here to chapter 1. All right. So we are. Let the circle be unbroken. Problems, challenges, issues, and terms. Okay. So I want you to turn to page 3. This will be in the new edition. Second edition, and in the first edition. Hold up, I got both of them here. It would still be page 3. Third edition, page 3. First edition, page 3, and second edition, page 3. Okay. So here I put the text out here. Can somebody read this out loud for me, or for us, I should say?
I'll go. It says they focus on differences in language and customs, even physique, from one African society to another. They do this with good reason. It is an emphasis that serves their objectives. Until we learn that it serves our objectives to focus on the similarities, the connections, the unifying principles, the common threads and themes that bind and identify us all as African, we will continue to be politically and ideologically confused. The critical issue for us is identity. Ashe.
Ashe. I'm sorry, and I put page 3. I'm sorry. This is page 1. Let me make that correction. I'm sorry. That's why if you're looking for it, you struggle. This is page 1. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Now, that jumps right into the middle of something. So what they're talking about when they say they is they're talking about the Europeans. We're using the word European to describe those people within the white supremacist construct called white, right? White is something that comes from the in the way that we utilize the term within the American context. Okay, I'm saying this for like real specific reasons, right? Comes from a white supremacist mindset and view. Other people, groups around the world referred to these people as white as well before they came around, but they referred to them as white, utilizing that word in a different way in which the word is utilized in English. Language is culture. Language is belief system. Culture is belief system. All right? So there's talking about differences in language in African culture. Now, you may not ascribe to be an African, and you might not be an African. You could be a native to Americas. You could be an Asiatic. You could be whatever you are, right? But we're talking about a Pan-Africanist here who's written this. But whatever you are, put in that word for African to denote what and who you are, all right? Find yourself, as we did earlier in our ancestral work. They focus on the difference in African language, customs, and even physique from one African society to another. They do this in good reason. Now, look what it is. It emphasizes that that is an emphasis that serves their objectives. Who could tell me what is their objective? What is the white supremacist objective? I'm gonna use that term because that's what we're really talking.
My opinion is they want to steal our soul.
Chanel said they want to steal our soul. That's one. Tell me what does it mean to steal a soul? Let's dive into that, Chanel. What do it mean to steal somebody's soul?
I gotta process that.
She dropped the gem, then you just channeled that. No, let me hit up. You know, I've been this. Look, we at the end of Hoodoo Heritage Month. All right, sinners. Right? What was the vampire trying to get? Reminick, the Irish vampire. He was trying to get what from Sammy? Now, we come from a call and response. That's actual code. That's actually, I'm not being rhetorical. I want y'all to answer that. What was he trying to get? Anybody know?
His power, right? So he was trying to get his power to call on spirits, call on the spirit world, call on the ancestors.
He was trying to get his power, right? He was trying to get his power. Now, remember we talked about earlier with the cleanse, there always come a test. Okay, and we're talking about two things today. We're talking about codes, we're talking about tests, all right? Yeshua in the Bible is tested while he's fasting. Buddha, his name is Gautama, or Sada, I'm forgetting his other name, was, if anybody remembers, you can call it out. Because I'm speaking of a particular Buddha. Was tested similar to Yeshua. Now, Buddha is a title and Christ is a title, okay? Now, I want y'all to peep this code. I'm about to give y'all a code. So when I read these texts, metaphysically, what I can say is that this is not talking just about an individual person. This is talking about the code. So it's the Buddha code, it's the Christ code. What's the Buddha? What's the Christ? The enlightened one. The set apart one for enlightenment. Okay? The conscious one. Christ consciousness is the consciousness of everything. Buddha consciousness is the consciousness of everything. They're the same thing. One is in the West, one is in the East. Okay? So we can go down into Africa and we can look at people like Orumila or the Oduduwa, right? Over in the Native American side, there was this peacekeeper that brought peace to 7 different tribes. It was 6 or 7 different tribes, and some big number of tribes. He brought peace to all of them. He came with the enlightened consciousness. Y'all tracking with me? Okay. So in both of their temptations, both of them are tested. The Christ and the Buddha. They're tested. What are they going to receive after the test? Both of them enter into their ministries. Both of them receive a certain level of enlightenment, which now is going to allow them to interact with reality in a new way and help others to achieve a particular form of enlightenment, which we could call Christhood or Buddhahood. All right? Initiation. They're going through initiation so that they can initiate others. Now right? All right, now peep this. So part of the initiation is a challenge. That's like us who go through rites. We know a part of our initiation was challenges. All right? That's why even in the military, you go through what? Challenges. That's an initiation. When you are going through school, you are being initiated. When you go to university, you're being initiated. That's why you receive a degree. A degree in what? Right? That's initiation. That's why you got to wear a robe and they got all those symbols and they got all this certain mark. You're going through a spiritual ritual when you go to a graduation. Do y'all know that? Just think about it. Where else did you wear robes and there's symbols everywhere and they're singing certain songs and they're doing a certain walk and then you got to shake somebody's hand, right? The president hand, all this stuff. This is very, very, yeah, I ain't gonna say that word on here, but this is incredibly spiritual at behavior for those that understand what all that means that I just said. You shaking hands, you making agreements. You singing the national anthems. You singing anthems. There's particular music. There's particular things that's happening. There's people wearing all kind of different stuff, garb. This is a ritual. You went through tests. You went through challenges. And one of the challenges that's presented is giving away your worship, right? Giving away who and what you are. Bow down and worship me. Right? It's a test of character. What the enemy does, what the stranger does, what the opposing energy does is test our character. That's selling your soul. Your character has been tested. Are you willing to compromise your character? Are you willing to give up who you are for whatever? I say. So, but remember, Ani, what does she point to? What is their objective? Power. The white supremacist system objective is power. But I'm gonna expand it. Let's go further, because remember, white people are new on this planet in comparison to indigenous people or the people that was already melanated people. People groups mutate. There are a particular type of mutation, right, that happened in Europe that caused them to have this type of skin. Now, we all are mutants, really, all of us. Mutation is, we don't have to look at it as something so negative, right? Mutation is what plants and things and animals do. So, but they're a newer mutation. We had albinos all the time, but talking about them as a collective. So this energy of domination, power, and control has already existed before them. That's not new. So I'm not going to demonize white people based off of what the white supremacists are doing, because that energy is older than them. And Marimba Ani gets into that in the book Urugu. All right? And I'm going to drop in the chat later this week, I'm going to drop a playlist of all the lectures I could find in Marimba Ani. You know, I'll send y'all like a particular lecture, but I'm going to drop a huge list for y'all that like to just listen so you can get her energy. I want you to be able to, that's what I'd like to do with an author. I want to be able to hear the tone of their voice, really feel their energy. And we can't get that from a book. I gotta hear the mama talk. But what she talk about is that their objective, right? The European objective has been, and when I say the European, we talking about those in power. We ain't talking about the person who just, the peasant. The peasant ain't ever had no power. That's the majority of the people, peasants. You gotta get that. We talking about the people in power. They want to dominate. They dominated each other. Then they went across the planet and tried to dominate the planet. It started with the Romans. Right? And they went dominated. In the Spanish, they dominated. In the British, they dominated. And then in Germany, tried to dominate the world. And he couldn't do it. Because the Americans and the Russians stopped them. Then you had the Japanese. The Japanese wanted to dominate the world. America stopped them. Then America did what? Took up the mantle and went across and dominated the world. And that's why the majority of the money in America goes to the military. Domination. That is the reason that they focus on the difference is to disconnect us from who and what we are, the holistic idea of integration, because if you can segregate a person from themselves, a person from their family, communities, if you can do that, then you can control them. It is for one reason. We must get this. And for y'all that was in the Neely Fuller study group, we went deep into that. It is about white supremacy and it's about domination. It's about politics. Somebody want to say, well, I'm spiritual, but I ain't political. I'm spiritual, but I ain't into politics. Then I don't know. Look, we are here in the physical. That's a separation. That whole idea saying, well, I can be this, but not be this. That is Eurocentric thinking. That's what Marimba Ani talking about. And she talks about this. She said, you can't be spiritual. You can't think I'm physical and not spiritual. It don't exist like, that's not how the world works. That's not the African mindset. That's another lie. All this stuff is interconnected. What I may mean is I don't like watching politics. I don't like engaging with it, right? You can say that. That's true. But it affects you and impacts you. And it does me too. And we need to recognize that it is important, even if our calling is not that. So we can support those who's called to it. It's very important. And some folk who are spiritual like to spiritualize a whole bunch of stuff so they don't have to be responsible for actually doing the things that's necessary. I'm gonna say it just like that. They don't want to deal with the emotion that come with where we are and what we're going through right now. So I've heard people that spiritualize and act be in la la land. Nah, yo, that ain't what Bantu about. We holistic, we're interconnected, and we may say for a time period, you know, I'm not going to engage with that because I'm engaging with something else. But what we're not going to do is belittle something, right? Because we don't want to deal with how heavy it is. Like, let's be honest. You tracking with what I'm saying? Right? Ain't no Lululemon here. You know, some people get spiritual. Woo, 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 woo. Bring it. That's what we started with the ancestors. Bring it on home. We gotta come home. Dealing with the real shit we really in and what we dealing with. Right? Y'all feeling me? If my family effed up, if my community effed up, if all this stuff, if I'm effed up, I gotta deal with that. Straight up. I can't ignore it. Right? All right. So until we learn that it serves our objective to focus on the similarities, the connections, and the unifying principles, the common threads and themes that bind us all as African, we will continue to be politically and ideologically confused. The critical issue for us is identity. And there's people right now online who are going heavy anti-Pan-African. Heavy. It's happening right now. I will say this. They are having their own journey, their own expression of trying to figure out identity. And for many different reasons, and the main one is self-hatred to me and trauma and sometimes oppositional energy working, chaos energy working, is we have Black folk that attack other Black folks that's trying to heal. So I ain't even gonna attack them people because they trying to heal, but the ones that are trying to heal that are connected to that group. But there's some of them that's causing chaos and confusion for already confused people. Right? And I'm gonna say this: test the tree by its fruit. You don't know them people, you don't know them people. Straight up. Think somebody right just because they said something that sounds slick. You might be getting hustled. Same thing with me. You don't know me, you don't know me. I mean, you need to check. You need to check my energy. You need to check what I'm talking about. Them, check their energy and check what they talking about before you believe it because it sounds slick and they got a whole bunch of people liking posts. All right, I'm gonna say it just like that. But I ain't gonna attack them because I think the critical, just like she said, the critical issue is identity. But I will say this: somebody who's attacking people who literally have suffered, sacrificed, and had to die to get us the information that we have, I think those people need to check themselves before they want to go around and talking shit about dead ancestors that helped liberate us. I'm gonna say it just like that. They may need to check that. I would. And that's not saying that what they saying don't have no truth to it. But what I'm saying is they need to check themselves on that because it's a lot of disrespectful talk going on. It's not good. It ain't good for the community. We can have dialogue. Don't be all that disrespectful stuff. It's unnecessary. And I'm gonna say this too. Some of them are disrespecting who we call Native Americans. They disrespecting some of them too, right? Some of them tribes, some of them nations and stuff, and call them all kind of names. And see, this is the symbol of trauma. You gotta denigrate and put others down to lift yourself up. That is the energy that we're dealing with. That's the energy we're dealing with. So when we see it show up in us, we need to be able to call that out and handle it and purge ourselves from it. And we need to correct those that's doing it in love. And that's why I'm saying what I'm saying right now. It's an in love correction. Not saying what they saying is right or wrong, but I'm talking about the way in which things are said. Ashe? I might have lost some of y'all on that, but some of y'all know the thing that I'm talking about. I'm talking about some of the people who talk about that we're not Africans, that we're Aboriginal and Indigenous Americans to this country, but some of them are saying that and sharing actual real information and being enlightened and really, you know, embracing our American blood and all that and roots and history and all that, which is beautiful and wonderful. Because I share that. I'm a native too. But to do that and to put others down and call other people CIA operatives and to say all that, people that I don't know if they know the full history of the Pan-Africanist movement and what all the people that died at the hands of Yimba for being Pan-Africanists, including Malcolm X. You know, that's one of the reasons he was killed. Okay, moving on from there. But it's important I go ahead. We gotta bring this down thing though. I'm gonna call it out because it's out there. I know a lot of y'all interacting with it because it's in conscious circles right now. But I'm gonna say, and I hope you know you do your own soul searching on that. But if you know anybody like that, it's like, hey yo, I'm gonna say it just how we say it. you know, you got to tell somebody, yo, watch your mouth, man. It's like that. It's like, yo, could you watch your tone and how you talk about something? That's real disrespectful. Like why you got to come disrespectful with it? Because you got some, you have some perceived knowledge over somebody else, or what you think is over somebody else. So now you're gonna put somebody else down. Yo, that's working in the same energy as Yimbo, man. That's the deep. See, that's why we gotta go past the skin and the racial stuff. We gotta get into what the real energy is, so we can recognize that energy within ourselves and that energy operating around us, and then say, nah, you know, no. All right, all right. Let me shut up. Why? Because Africa survives in our spiritual being. Africa survives in our spiritual being. All right, what does this mean to you? I'm gonna shut up. I want somebody else to speak. I'm channeling a lot this morning, so let me let somebody else have some space. Oh, I hear Baba Ibrahim said trying to access his memory about what I was talking about earlier. Ashe. Right. And see, and I don't want to judge how people are trying to work through that, you know, because people are trying to access that, and I get it. I get it, especially what was done to us natives here. I get it, you know. But we got a lot of self love to do and grace to handle with, and some grace we got to extend to each other. Anybody want to speak on this?
When I was watching her, one of the videos you sent me of her yesterday, I would say, I know she in the interview she was talking about how we are stronger when we connect to our ancestors, when we continue to keep them alive. We are stronger. And she was saying that us connecting to our ancestors and stuff like that is a part of our spiritual being. Is how we continue to grow. Is how we continue to evolve. Is how we continue to be strong. So that's what I would think that she's talking about with this.
I agree with that. Peace, everyone. I will add on that in the African paradigm, we have this thing called ancestral memory. We have this thing called the ancestral spirit, and the ancestors, the elders teach that it doesn't matter what religion you come from or what God you serve. Master Nabil Musa Merin Denebek said directly that you know that you come from your mother and father, and you know that they came from their mother and father, and you know that they came from their mother and father. And all of these ancestors that we consider that we came from, we know that that's where we definitely come from. He said, now, no matter what God you serve, God had to create human beings in us in a way whereas we come from each other, and that human beings don't just fall out the sky or just they just come from nowhere. So he was saying that it's the ancestral spirit that brings human beings here. That's why all of our ancestors in our past have venerated that spirit, because we know that it doesn't matter if it's Allah, it doesn't matter if it's Olodumare, whatever your God you serve, your God created a means for human beings to exist, and that's through the ancestral spirit, and that's why we have to honor it.
I say. We have one more. I feel we got one more. I'm going to speak on this. Africa survives in our spiritual being. Okay, all right, I'm gonna move on. All right, thank you, Ibrahim, thank you, Chanel. All right, the next part that she really locks on is ethos and worldview. All right, ethos and worldview. So let's get into that. All right, so I'm highlighting some of these key words. Can somebody read this for us? It's on page 4.
Ethos-like culture is understood to refer to shared group reaction and group responses. The ethos of Abba, am I saying that right, y'all? Children or seeds of Africa refers to our unique spirit and spiritual being. It is a result of our shared cultural history and is derived from Africa.
All right. what are y'all pulling from this idea of ethos? What's resonating? Is anything resonating with you when it comes to this concept?
For me, excuse me. So so beginning with us here in the United States, right? So a shared experience. So it's our reaction to that experience of colonialism, slavery, rape, murder, and all those things. Then it's our reaction to it, right? So we have a shared ethos. But I think kind of speaking to what you were saying earlier, with all this whole diasporic wars and all these silly things in the Caribbean, within the Caribbean, they also have a shared ethos, right? And how they were enslaved and how they were treated, right? So that's their share because but certain things happened to them. But between us in the United States and them in the Caribbean, we all have a shared ethos, right? Because it was all slavery, it was all rape and murder and taking us from the motherland and stuff like that. We might have got treated. Our enslavement was probably done in a certain way, but it was still enslavement. Their enslavement was done in a certain way, but it was still enslavement. And the same goes with South America and stuff like that. So we all have a shared ethos, even on the continent, right? Their treatment might have been a little bit different than how our treatment was over here. But at the end of the day, we reacted to that experience. Everybody reacted to it, and they rose up and they fought against it. And so that's what their response was. So it's shared if we just look at it like that. I'm complete.
I say. Yeah, we can look at that as what I'm hearing you say is there's a shared slavery experience within the Americas of African people. Then there's a colonized experience of African peoples globally, even those that were not enslaved still dealt with the effects of colonization. And the only place that I know that wasn't colonized with Ethiopia was Ethiopia, and Ethiopia still had to deal with war, and a part of them was, that's where Eritrea gets separated and stuff due to the colonization attempt. So everybody is dealing with this, and then we can extend it past those who we would tend to refer to as African, and we can go into melanated people. We can go into people across the globe who've had this similar experience, right? But here she's highlighting on the ethos of Abibi Ma, the seeds of Africa, the children of Africa. And she's saying it refers to our unique spirit and spiritual being. Okay, our unique spiritual and spiritual being. All right, thank you. But that's a beautiful response there. All right, now I've thought about this a lot. What is our unique spirit and spiritual being? And I see something particular within Black people in the United States of America, and I call it the blues. Okay, really, it's also soul. We call soul music and soul food and neo soul. We're talking about something when we use that word. When we use the word jazz, we talking about something. We talking about something deeply spiritual and unique. We talk about jazz and the blues and soul and funk. The whole funk, nothing but the funk, right? We talking about even hip hop. But I'm gonna go take it back to the blues. There's something in that that's very core to the human experience. Because the blues is grief, but the blues is also passion and joy and sex. Blues really life, like raw life, expression of raw life, right? So I see that as something unique to the spirit and the spiritual being. And then so I said, well, let me look, and do I see this jazz, this soul, this blues? Do I see that in African people across the planet? Can I see that thread? Y'all tracking with me? Because I definitely see it with us, that thread, you know. Okay. All right, let's go here. Can somebody read this out loud? And then what are your thoughts on it? Worldview. Because she makes a difference between ethos and worldview. Though she says they're intimately related. Anybody can read it. I just ask you read it in English, please.
Worldview refers to the way in which a people make sense of their surroundings, make sense of life and of the universe.
Okay. Right? It's real self-explanatory here, right? How we make sense of things. Now, this I thought was really interesting in this idea. Religion, which is a part of a worldview, right, is when we have difficulty making sense of life circumstances and vicissitudes. Remember, the worldview refers to the way in which we're making sense of things. When we have difficulty with that, we turn to what some refer to as religion, meaning faith or deepest beliefs. Okay? Now, the term worldview is related to this meaning, but it's not in the form of an institutionalized religion. All right? The worldview does not include any rituals, but it explains why the rituals are necessary. Let me go back to the thing, right? Let me go back to worldview's definition. It refers to the way in which a person makes sense of what's happening. They making sense of life in the universe. The ritual, the religion and the ritual was the outcome of what somebody was making sense of. Y'all tracking that? There's a difference there. Because if you don't know that the reason why somebody doing it, right? See, this started with a thought, and then it got created. Now, this is something she said that's real powerful. She said it does not include the rituals, but explains why they are necessary. So we're doing that ancestral work. That's one of the reasons I was explaining what I was doing to y'all. If I just did the ritual, you wouldn't know the metaphysical properties of the water, the fire, anything else that I'm doing. Actually, I didn't explain the metaphysical part. Well, yeah, I did explain part of what the fire was for, the candle, right? I didn't explain the full thing. I explained part of it. But the more you get at that, now you're gonna understand the reason why. All right. Now peep this. It's real important. She said, for African people, this talking about the worldview, it is more like spiritness and philosophy, or this was Jacob Carruthers' term, deep thought. Okay? The why. We talking about worldview, we talking about the why. We talking about religion, we talking about faith, the deepest beliefs, but we may not know the why. Y'all tracking with me? This is why I would say when we talk about African worldview, we talk about the African spirituality or the African religions, why a lot of us, you're going to hear us talk about the sciences. Because really what we're talking about, what we're describing is that in the African sense, there's an idea of like, what's the why, the hidden meanings, okay? All right. So I wanted to break that down because this is real key in getting this kind of thought process. All right. Someone want to read this. This is real key. This is found on page 4. In just the first paragraph. Okay, nobody gonna read? I'll read. Human beings cannot function in chaos. And out of a chaos life, they create an ordered existence. I should say dominant. The dominant theme or character of that order, which is the worldview, will be a function of their collective ethos. Culture is ordered behavior. Right? Human beings cannot function in chaos. But out of that chaos, they create an ordered existence. Out of chaos, people create culture because you can't function in chaos. Who can give me some examples of this? Right? Of the creation of culture coming out of chaos. Anybody? Okay.
I mean, from cultures that emanate from chaos, we can look at the like historically the war concept, the barbarism that was created when Onyembo first came out of the Ice Age, and they were starting to mix with, um, you know, brown people who had already created civilization and structures that from the agricultural era and from being able to access stars, and that high civilization came into contact with barbarism. So because there was no culture, there was no order in their culture, and what their culture really was snatch and grab. They Anything that they learned from our ancestors now, they transmuted that same learning into a concept of war. Hence, an example would be when they saw the power of our ancestors through pharaohship, they would steal, when they became organized, they would steal like the pharaoh's bodies and eat them. Or when they learned about gunpowder, which had been around for hundreds of years, that was used for spiritual practices, or in Asia where it's used for spiritual practices and things like fireworks, they expanded the concept of the gun and created weapons of mass destruction from gunpowder, or a culture of chaos where you learn about the foundation of all of the ecosystems in this realm are made up of atoms, and you split it and create nuclear bombs. Like that whole chaotic way of, and then we can look at it also as feminine energy. But when we have masculine and feminine energy, it's important to have chaos in our energetic systems, but the feminine is that energy, and then the masculine is the ordered energy, and together they create a harmony. But when there's no balance between the masculine and feminine, then the feminine creates a chaotic energy throughout, whatever it's expressed in. So when you have systems or cultures that don't have balance, then you see that.
Mm. I say, yeah. Really, like, yeah. I don't want to, I can talk, so I don't want to go on. Somebody else have either response to Ibrahim or response to this first paragraph.
I mean, I'm thrown off what you said, Ibrahim, about them eating the pharaohs. Like I didn't know that. That blew my mind when you said that.
Used them as medicine. Ground up that mummy.
Exactly.
And ate us too.
Still doing it. Blood ritual, all of that.
And during the lynchings. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And there's a metaphysical thing to that. Look, let me go back. There's a why to that. With somebody going deeper into this worldview thing, then that will start to make sense why they do that, why they've done that, what made that okay for them. Right? I'm going to highlight something Ibrahim said. He talked about the war thing, right? He talked about you had these different groups of people, and then what you notice is that the one group that was chaotic did take some things from the people that had order and utilize those things within their people group so they could have some order, right? Then they used them. Then they used it to dominate and have power, right? This particular folks. But notice that they did order they didn't just continue in absolute chaos, because why? You can't function. You can't, right? So they utilized some. And now look at what the world is, because the nuclear weapon was created, an instrument of chaos. Now some countries have to try to create that instrument of chaos so that they can check the other countries of chaos to not blow them up, right? You got a bunch of people trying to get the thing. But then what happened? The nations, humanity, got together and said, hey, we need some order here. Why? Because y'all got these instruments of destruction and we don't want the whole world going into chaos. So then you get nuclear agreements made on a global level, which some people will say, well, those are made to just try to stop people from, from having more nuclear weapons and other countries having more power. But I would say that between the major power players with the nuclear weapons, right, with the United States and their allies in Russia, them the big, and China and stuff, and big dogs with the nuclear weapons, that it's a good thing for humanity to say, hey, order. Y'all crazy ass people with the weapons, order. We are commanding you. We are commanding you to have order. You don't ask them, you have to command them. We command that there's order. It's a spiritual thing, right? So we see the world right now, there's fights going on, political fights going on, where there's some that are trying to cause chaos, and there's some that are trying to bring order. Right? That's the real political fight, because the word political means power. That's the real power fight. So power is past what we think about just politics. The politic really is power. And that's the real power fight. It was over chaos and order and the balance between them. Right? It is not created individually. All groups who are racially and historically related share a way of viewing the world and realities with which it presents them. A worldview results from a shared cultural experience. Just as it helps us to form that experience, it presents us with a systematic set of ideas about many things. Right? And I think one of the important things is to recognize that we have these things if we know it or not. And because we have been raised in America, because we went to school, because we watch TV and listen to the radio and are on the internet, we have been given the worldview of Yimbo, of the stranger, white supremacist system. We are giving that worldview, right? And as she's talking about, we also have our worldview is being created out of this shared cultural experience. Don't mean it's all negative. And it don't mean it all just come from them. It also comes from us and how we're responding to Yimbo. Y'all tracking with me? Because remember, this is a response to it. So it's not saying Yimbo just dominate us, right? The stranger just dominate us and then we're just a victim to him. No.
Did you hear the comments that the foreign minister from Nigeria made? I don't know when they take them saying this, but he was saying that Nigeria don't fear no sanctions from the U.S. or nobody else because they 230 million strong. And they could set up independent trade with China or Russia, whoever the hell else they want to set up independent trade with. I kind of look at that as them ignoring the chaos the United States is trying to create by enforcing them sanctions on other countries, especially dark countries where dark people are, you know?
Thank you for that, Bob and Mike. Right. They're saying we're going to ignore your foolishness.
Exactly.
We're going to ignore your trick. We're ignoring that we ain't paying attention. No, we didn't really looked at it. We didn't look. Let's go back to the deep thought. Right? We've looked thoroughly. We've made sense of our surroundings. We've made sense of you and what you're doing. We got a worldview out of our dealings with you. And now we know what this is. You ain't telling us nothing to do. We command our sovereignty. Ashe. Thank you, Baba Mike.
Ashe.
Somebody read this out loud.
What happens when the people are forced to survive within a culture based upon a worldview that is oppression to their ethos?
All right, now we're gonna get into some real chaos. Right? What happens when peep it? Remember, you got a worldview. Then you got an ethos. Let's go back. Remind y'all the ethos. The ethos is, right? Oh, let me annotate it. Hopefully this works. Yeah, it did. Refers to our unique spirit and spiritual being. I got that? And is derived and is a result of our shared cultural history and is derived from Africa. Y'all got that? Okay, this is a deep, remember, we deep dive in marimba with Mama Marimba. You look, hope you got your coffee. Okay. All right, now let me go back. I'm trying to take this annotation off here. There we go. Get rid of it. So that's ethos. Worldview. The way people make sense of their surroundings, make sense of life in the universe. All right. So, what happens when a person, their worldview, the way that they make sense of reality in the universe, is oppressive to their spiritual being? What happens? What's your thoughts? And how have you experienced this? But what's your thoughts on that? And how is no? Let's make that more clear. How is this happening to you, and how has this happened to you? Yeah, let me shut. I want to shut up. You know, I'm a talker, and I'll start breaking. I'm a teacher. I'm not trying to disregard my gift. I'm a teacher, but y'all have something to teach too. This is not just right. This is you. So what do y'all think?
All right, so like from my own perspective, if we looking at like the macrocosm and the microcosm, so we're a microcosm of our society, right? And as natural sovereign beings, meaning that the creator put us on top of an earth, a planet that's intelligent, and we interact with a sun that's intelligent, and we interact with oceans and waters, rivers, livers, streams that are intelligent. We interact with nature that's intelligent. We automatically know that we have a divine right to be uh, in harmony with that. And when we're in a culture that worldview is based on oppression, it it stifles our ability or our thinking of being in one with nature and expressing our true divine nature, and it makes us move as we are enslaved people. So on an individual level, if I'm grown up based on what Brother Josh was saying with the culture of an oppressor, that means that without them having to physically do anything to me, I can oppress myself and my spirit and make myself small. And the way that I might do that personally might be, you know, um, you know, that lack of self-love that I might demonstrate, where I allow, without creating the proper boundaries to allow people to respect me the way that they need to. Or I might be so hard on myself. We talked about this yesterday, brother. Be so hard on myself that I don't give myself enough grace to allow my thoughts to be in harmony with nature. And I'm so busy beating myself up that I don't see the blessings that I have. So when we live in a cultural society that is oppressive, we start to put value on things that are not valuable, like that they have the whole world valuing money when it is a created illusion that they just created. And we focus most of our life, and some people have made money such a god that we've missed the reality of how beautiful life can be, because we focus on trying to achieve it. We focus on trying to obtain it, as opposed to trying to be in tune with the forces of nature that naturally bring wealth. So like once we bypass their like blocks, then we can, I want to stay away from the word free because it has so many connotations, but for lack of better words, non-oppressed.
Sorry, I say. So I was muted. Somebody else. That's it right there. This worldview. When your worldview goes against your ethos, when the way that you make sense of the world goes against your spirit. All right, I'm gonna throw one out there. Y'all can interrupt me though. Please jump in. I'm gonna throw one in there. About Ibrahim was speaking, I was thinking about it. Like, so I'm gonna give you one. One is, I was trained that boys and men, were supposed to operate a particular way, which was only within the masculine. And the way that the masculine was explained to me was stoic, violent, hypersexual, uh, and that's the way it was explained. Everything else was looked at as feminine and or homosexual. That was it. That's how it was explained by the my culture, and well, I should say partially by my culture. There was another part of my culture which explained masculinity and men in a whole nother form, right? But from the societal culture, especially, right? And in the youth culture, I got that expression, right? From the elders, I got something much more nuanced. And actually, it was within their music and those that were influenced by their music, like the now departed brother D'Angelo, who was very influenced by Prince. And Prince was very, very influenced by the blues men, by funk, and by everything else, right? And out of these people, what you got was a different expression of masculinity that encompasses and that and you got an expression from men of the feminine in many different ways. Just that they're musicians. That's creativity. That's artistry. That's on the feminine line, right? So anyway, but the worldview that I was having, and it was, and that then tapped in also to the grind culture, that you have to grind, that you gotta be the best. You gotta be the best. You gotta grind. No sleep, like sacrifice, give. No balance, like all gas, no breaks. That whole thing, that mentality, yo, it was so oppressive to my creativity and to my health and to my rest. Like that other aspect of my spirit, like was being suffocated by the worldview that I had. It was completely oppressing my feminine. It was completely oppressing my inner child. It was completely oppressing the creative within me. And that mentality was dominated by money. It's dominated by control and power. Y'all feel me? All right. Anybody else? That's how I find it. That's how I found it come up in me. And one of the reasons too, see, I can say Western society. I can say European society. I can say white supremacy. I can say white folks. I can say that. And I can say you can see their society and their culture. We can see where all these aspects are. The reason, and I'm not wrong if I say that, but the reason I'm not just saying them is because if I do that, then if I just do that and I don't say this too, this exists outside of them as well. Ashe? It exists within me. It exists in other cultures as well. Because what will happen is we can become that and won't be able to recognize it when it shows up in different ways. So if I'm working with some Africans, or I'm working with some Asians, or I'm working with some Native Americans, or I'm working with whoever, with some black folks in America, and that energy comes up, I need to be able to recognize it wherever it show up. Because it ain't just them, it's an energy. All right, let me shut up on that. But anybody else where they see their worldview, right, attacking their ethos? Let me say this real quick too. I told y'all about the autoimmune diseases. Yo, I think this is the autoimmune disease of the spirit. I'm gonna stop right there. It's a spiritual autoimmune disease. It's this right here. All right, nobody else? Okay, I'm gonna move on. Okay, something else mama hit, metaphysics, African metaphysics, right? Or spiritual philosophy, cosmology, epistemology, ontology, indicating our conceptions of the structure of the universe, the relationship and origin of nature and human beings, truth and knowledge, reality, and the nature of being. So you're going to hear things, you may hear me refer to metaphysics, right? and she's right here breaking down the African metaphysic. So this is indicating our conceptions and structures of reality in the universe and all these things. All right. And the word metaphysics. It's important. Words are real important to know. You know, that was a big thing Nelly Fuller talked about. He talked about words and understanding words, right? Metaphysics in itself, a branch of philosophy that deals with the first principles of things, including the abstract concepts such as being, knowing, substance, cause, identity, time, and space. Okay. All right. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's our last one. All right, somebody read this. This is our last slide. Okay, I'll read it. A people's worldview affects and tends to determine their behavior. A universe understood totally in materialistic rationalist terms will discourage spirituality. An ethos characterized by a will to power, by the need to control, will derive pleasure from a technical order, from conflict, from winning, which is destroying. Remember, in conflict is war, and exploitation, consuming, using up. Africans are forced to ask and answer the question, what happens when a people are forced to live, survive within a culture based upon a worldview oppressive to their ethos? So that's why I bring this up, because here we are. We have here, now get it, an ethos characterized by a will to power, by the need to control, will derive pleasure from an order, a technical order of war, destroying, consuming, using up. So what we see here is we see the Western world. We see the European world. We see the white supremacy of Australia, of South Africa, how it expressed itself in Asia, how it expressed itself in what we call the Middle East and in the Americas. And especially, let's just take America for a second, United States of America. We have the biggest military on the planet. America has the most, has some of, with its allies, has the most nuclear weapons, with the allies' nuclear weapons. America also has military bases everywhere. A huge portion of our money is goes to the military. All right. So and the country has vast majority of the history of the country has been at war. I think it's either 12 or 16 years when the country was not at war. Constantly. So this is a warmongering place. From winning, a constant wanting to win, which is destroying something else. The economy constantly trying to grow destroys the underclass. Constant growth, the rich are getting richer, is destroying the underclass and the middle class. They don't care. So from destroying or from winning, and because for them, what winning is destroying somebody else. They don't believe there's winning without losers. So somebody got it, so they want to destroy the losers so they can win. The next one is exploitation, consuming and using up. America takes in the vast majority of the world's resources. I mean, not the majority, but it takes in more than anybody else. We're a consumerist culture. So, right, what happens when people are forced to live within a culture based upon a world view? Because some people have an ethos, a spirit about them, which is war focused, destruction focused, and consuming focused. Right? This is a key thing that we have to deal with, and that we are one of the reasons why we're reading this book. Okay. All right. All right, y'all. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the sharing online. If I can find it. All right. Stop the recording here. All right. And I turn off AI companion. All right, and I stop my screen, and I'm gonna try to cut off the other thing too. Okay, y'all. All right, so that is that's the first. That's a better dive into the first chapter of Let the Circle Be Unbroken. I feel better now. All right, we covered some of that now in that other session that we did, but yeah, I wanted to make sure we got that, especially for those who were recording it, where it's being recorded to.